for today's stream that were sent to us on Twitter. Ryan always polls and asks for questions on Twitter. But again, we are taking questions live throughout the stream that are coming in the YouTube comments. If you haven't done so already, subscribe, hit that like button. Let's get into it, Ryan. First question that we've got from Chop. Gee, I wonder why he's asking this question with the Rutgers player in his as his profile picture. Sleeper.
Do you know who the Rutgers player is? Do you know who that Rutgers player is?
Is that Ray Rice?
No, it's Brian Leonard.
My eyes are poor. Sleeper running back prospects is his question. Little open-ended, a little bit vague for the question. I'll throw to you first here. Who are, if you had to toss out, and we've got a similar question later that we're going to get to that it leads to the title of the stream of we're going to actually share like a full team of underrated prospects at each position. But if you had to just throw out some of your favorite sleeper running backs, who would you throw out?
I mean, does Kyle Monangai count in this conversation? I feel like he kind of counts, right? I mean, the Rutgers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before the season, we were talking about him as a potential top 10 running back in this class, and it's not really that he had a bad season by any stretch. I mean, I feel like he kind of had the same season that he had the previous, Joe, but like, I think we saw it a little bit at the combine. Like, he's just not a dynamic athlete, right? And that's going to cause him to fall down boards a little bit. But I would argue that Kyle Monangai has a very strong floor as an NFL prospect because he is pretty good in tight quarters. He runs with good contact balance. He runs through arm tackles and he pass blocks, right? He pass protects. So all those things I think gives him a good baseline. I want to throw two guys out there though. One guy I think I literally talked about last week on this channel, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, guy that's going to keep talking about. The New Mexico transfer, Arizona, only played one game in Arizona due to an eligibility issue, but had 100 yards in that game, went to the East-West Shrine Bowl, was very good that week, and then went to his pro day and tested bananas as an athlete. So I think that kid is going to be borderline draftable, maybe priority free agent, but I would not be shocked if in a year or two, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is a guy that is playing a lot of football, potentially in a role for an NFL team. Last guy, Joe. We haven't talked about this guy much, but he was really good this year. Woody Marks, USC, Mississippi State transfer. I mean,
yeah.
Do you know he has the most receptions of any running back in FBS history? Did you know that for a career?
He has the most receptions for running back in NCAA history?
FBS history. Okay. I don't know if there's a FCS or a Division II kid that's higher, a Division III kid that's higher, or NAIA kid. I have no idea. But for a FBS player, again, he spent time at Mississippi State and USC this past year, most receptions of an FBS player ever. So that gives you a good baseline, right? Of making a roster, being good at catching the football. But his film this year at USC was really good, man. Like, I thought Mississippi State was pretty good, but this year I thought was better. Again, not a dynamic athlete. I think he ran like more mid 4.5s. He was like 4.56 at the combine, so he's not going to run away from a bunch of dudes. But his explosiveness is good. His change of direction is good. He makes people miss, and he catches the football really, really well. So I think Woody Marks, as a potential 6th to 7th round draft pick in his loaded running back class, he's a kid that I think can and will be a part of a rotation for an NFL team in the early portion of his career for sure.
Monangai is the really easy one that I always come up with. I'm just such a fan of the way that he plays. I keep saying that he's going to be this year's Bucky Irving and Kyron Williams, the player that goes somewhere on day 3, maybe isn't as juiced up explosive as all the other running backs that are going to go ahead of him. But because he does the one specific thing that's really underrated for running backs that doesn't get talked about enough by us as evaluators, by fans, by fantasy football analysts, is his willingness to block and his impact as a blocker. So he gets on the field early as potentially a 5th or 6th round pick, despite not having good testing numbers. And then eventually you're on the field more. You get options to run the ball, you get receptions out of the backfield, whatever it is, and he takes advantage of those touches because he runs super hard. That is how he ends up turning out to be a productive player during his NFL career. A guy that James Foster, former host of this channel, and also Connor Rogers has tweeted about in the past couple of days. I got to give a little love to Lan Larison of UC Davis, who's big dude. He was insanely comically productive this year. He should have won the Walter Payton. I think that Lan Larison should have won the FCS award, the FCS Heisman, essentially. I implore anybody who is a total sicko, if you can find Land Larison highlights anywhere. Just go on Twitter and type in Land Larison. People are posting things. The UC Davis account has posted things. I think that if there's just a random dude that goes undrafted or at the end of the 7th round, and we're suddenly like, who the hell is this guy? And has like one flash season. I think that it could totally be Land Larison.
He's fun. He's a fun player. I think James Foster said something to this effect of he's the most underrated player in this class overall. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
I think so because no one has talked about him. Nobody has talked about him.
He also did not get a Senior Bowl invite. He did not get a Shrine invite. So like he's lower on the totem pole. He's not going to get drafted, right? Like there's no chance Land Larison gets drafted, I don't think.
I need to evaluate his film a little bit deeper, but I cover FCS football, so I've had exposure, a ton of exposure to him. His impact was so significant that when he went down against South Dakota in the FCS playoffs, they couldn't move the ball. They literally their offense completely collapsed. He was the reason why UC
Miles
Davis
Hastings that way at quarterback. Dude.
Miles Hastings was fine this year, but Land Larison was the reason why they were so successful. Well, what about to James's point of like who are the most underrated players? What's the name of that Buffalo linebacker? I haven't watched him.
Sean Dolac.
What do you think of him? Have you watched him? Because he tested really unexpectedly well. He was comically productive at Buffalo, but he didn't get invites to anything. Do you think that there's any truth to him being underrated, or do you think he's properly rated? Like, what am I missing here?
He's properly rated. This is gonna be a very hot take for some people out there because Sean Dolac has become like this year's darling, right? They're like, oh man, look at that production. He had 160 tackles last year for Buffalo. He plays so hard, great motor, blah 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 blah. Nobody and their mother thought he was as athletic as he tested. Nobody, Joe. Nobody thought he was that athletic, and he's a smaller backer as well. He's not going to get drafted. I don't think he's going to stick with the team. I know I sound super negative. Ryan's super negative. I know. I'm super negative. But if I'm being honest with everybody, right, which is why you tune into this channel, you don't tune in for me to just be like, yeah, every player's great. They're all going to be all pros. I would be shocked if Sean Dolac was on an active roster in 2025. I'm sorry to say it like that, but I don't see it. I don't see
R.I.P.
it.
We've got a couple questions.
Man, those tests
are
crazy.
I was shocked. I thought he wasn't going to be a good tester, and that's the problem is that when you've got athletic testing for guys, I think that this isn't. I'm not trying to be negative to the general knowledge of the general public and some smaller creators. I just think that it's really easy sometimes. I made the same mistake when I was in college and I was trying to learn more about the industry and like get into covering the draft. Especially the reason why I do this is I fell in love with this stuff when I was in high school. High school and college, I overemphasized testing numbers. I took no merit in what their film looked like and like actually learning to evaluate their film. And as I've done this now for multiple years and the more film that I watch, you do understand what makes certain guys actually capable of succeeding. So the numbers were great and the stats were great. Those two boxes are checked. Well, the concerns that you bring. So let me ask you this. So you think that I should just completely avoid watching Dolac? You think I shouldn't just not waste my time?
I think if you get some time, you should still watch him because he was the most productive linebacker in a lot of metrics this past year. He had a great year for Buffalo. There's no doubt. And they actually have another linebacker, Red Murdoch, who's actually a pretty interesting player himself. He's a little bit of a younger guy. I think he was either a sophomore or a junior, Richard Jr. this past year. But either way, Joe, I just wanted to add some context here of testing matters. Measurables matter. Like all those things matter. These thresholds we always yell about, like arm length. Oh, arm length overrated. Sure, it's overrated if it doesn't matter, but like it still matters usually, right? So these thresholds matter. The testing matters as long as it's translatable. And that's the key to the word there is translatable. There's some players that are great testers, but it doesn't really pop on film much. And then it's vice versa. There's some guys that are great players on film, but they don't test overly well. You have to outweigh the positives and negatives with each side. But more than anything, if a guy's a great tester and it doesn't show on film, it doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't matter. Like that stuff does not matter. It just doesn't, unless there's a very unique circumstance. It doesn't matter. So testing numbers, important. We overrate it if it doesn't match or show up on film at all. And unfortunately, again, I'm going to be a negative person, but like, I don't think for Dolak it shows up on film. I did not see 4-5 athlete on film. I did not see explosive on film. I saw a good, very good college football player who has great eyes and instincts. I don't necessarily see great athlete though on film, which is going to be it's going to be trouble for a guy that's a smaller linebacker. Like
Yeah.
we always talk about overcompensating traits. If you're not a huge linebacker, ability to run is important. But if you're not a great athlete on film and you're small, that's where things tend to get a little bit murky for projection.
Yeah, no, maybe he has success in the UFL. Maybe that's something that and guys like him tend to find success in the UFL because it's a setting where those characteristics that you just described, they're able to perform well because they have those instincts. There's a little bit less talent on the field, so it's easier for them to perform at a high level. Yep. We've got a couple questions in the chat that we're going to get to before we get to our next Twitter questions. Again, anyone who is joining the stream has a 2025 NFL draft question, comment in the chat. As soon as we get questions in the chat, we will answer those first. We prioritize those. We try to get to every single question that we can get to. So far, the past couple shows, we've had some great questions. If you're tuning in on Twitter, jump on over to the stream on YouTube to drop in your questions. We are only taking questions on YouTube. We're not taking the ones that are sent to us on Twitter. And if you haven't done so already, hit that like button and also subscribe. Ryan, the first question that we have from our good friend, Brian Govin. I hope I'm pronouncing Brian's last name correctly. Corey Kiner gives me, what'd you say?
Just call him Brian G. You don't have to pronounce last
Brian
name.
G. Corey Kiner gives me some Stephen Ridley vibes. Do you see him getting drafted? I've seen Kiner ranked pretty highly on a lot of boards, but I'll tell you what, I have a lot of running back grades right now. I haven't even watched him yet. Like I've got over 20. I haven't even gotten him. I think that paints the picture of how deep this running back class is, that we can rattle off so many names and guys like Kiner could end up slipping through the cracks.
Well, you need to go watch him because he might be coming on the podcast. So you definitely need to go watch Corey Kiner. Okay?
I will. No, I intend to. I'm
just joking. Former LSU transfer, Cincinnati, has been very good the last 2 years. The Stephen Ridley is actually very interesting, Brian, because I can see where it's coming from. He's kind of like that little sawed-off, low center of gravity type of dude that's really good after contact and kind of creates hidden yardage. Like I could see it for sure. He's a joy to watch. He really is. Like I said, he plays with low center of gravity. He breaks a ton of tackles, extra effort running. I think he's a really good short yardage runner, despite him not being the biggest back of all time, which is very interesting. So I think there's a role for him. I think he's borderline draftable in this class, and that's not a shot on his talent at all. Like he'll probably have a mid-day 3 grade for me when I finalize everything. But the thing here, Joe, is that I think actually I sent you my running back rankings. I think I had like a 5th round grade on him, if I remember correctly, a 6th round grade, somewhere in that ballpark. But he is just in the unfortunate circumstance of he's playing in such a deep running back class, man. Like he might be like running back 18 or 20 for a lot of people, but it's like, that's not necessarily a knock on him. It's just the fact that like this running back class is so deep. So he might end up going late day 3 at best, or maybe a priority free agent, but he's another guy that we probably should have mentioned in the underrated running back section. Like this is a guy that I think can be a value on the next level for a team in the right situation.
Other question that we have in the chat right now from Alex. He says, apologies if you have already talked about him, but what do you guys think of Isaac Tesla from Arkansas? I was pleasantly surprised by his performance at the Senior Bowl. He was not a receiver that was truly on my radar. I think that he's a quality name in a receiver class that is pretty thin. He's obviously the next Cooper Kupp or Ladd McConkey, Ryan. Of course, that's the I'm obviously joking. What do you think
he's
of
a big
Tesla?
outside receiver that can run? But yeah,
it makes perfect sense. What do you think of Tesla?
I think he's going to go higher than I think a lot of people think. I'm sure in most mock draft simulators, he's probably somewhere in like the 6th to 7th round range. I would not be shocked if he's more in day 3, early day 3 kid, maybe like 4th, 5th round, because he's a height, weight, speed dude, right? And in a less than It's like an average to below average wide receiver group. Like I think it's better than some people give it credit for, but I definitely it's less than what we've seen last like 4 or 5 years. 4 out of the last 5 years, they've been kind of historical groups. So it's not a great wide receiver class at all. It's not a horrible one either. But I do think in like the day three, especially early to mid round conversation, you're trying to find wide receivers that can at least fill a role for your team. And Tesla is one that can. He is. I would be shocked if he wasn't a core team special teamer early on in his career because of the height, weight, speed that he brings to the table. And from there, it's about can you develop those traits, right? Like can he develop and be a more well-rounded wide receiver? But he has those athletic gifts. He has a bigger body. I could see him being a developmental player early on in his career that plays a lot of special teams. And from there, as long as he's in the right situation and he develops properly, maybe he's a gem that you find in year 4, maybe into a second contract at that point. So special teamer early, developmental upside, height, weight, speed dude that has some desirable traits that a team will want to develop.
Right. Simply put,
I was told he might go top 125, Joe. I was told that. So we'll see if he goes that early. But yeah, man, I know. Just
that's receiver desperation right there. Holy crap. And also it plays to the I was on a spot last night, and I'm kind of taking this in a tangent. I was on I always do VSiN every Tuesday, and we were doing some of the markets for some of the position groups of like who's going to go first. And I brought this up for why the case for Matthew Golden to go first is simply based off of the history of knowing how the NFL handles receivers that have really good testing numbers. So like my argument was, look at all these guys in the past few years that were in the conversation for like the second or third receiver to be selected, right, but they had an insane 40 time and then they drooled over the speed. And this is something that you told me early on that is something to pay attention to. And they went on to be the first receiver drafted. Jameson Williams, Henry Ruggs, John Ross. There are so many names that we continue to pull from. I think that applies for Golden. And this also applies for Tesla, that he tested really well for his physical profile, that maybe the film and the production isn't really there. He's coming from smaller program, then to Arkansas. He's only really got like 1 year of decent production. But because he's got all these great testing numbers and he looked decent at the Senior Bowl, he checks those process milestones that it's enough for him to get drafted early in a draft class that has a really crappy receiver depth.
Well, who rises in drafts? It's the athletic freaks, right? It's the testers, because especially on day 3, and this is the conversation we're having with Tesla, Joe, is that I'm not taking a day 3 dart throw on a kid with just an okay floor, right? That doesn't have developmental upside. It's the reason that you're a day 3 player, right? Like you're not a kid that's going to come in and have such a high floor that you're going to come in and you're going to be a really good player for me early on, more than likely. You're betting on traits. You're betting on athleticism. You're dart throwing up, not dart throwing down. Like those are the kind of things that we talk about all the time. So he is a guy that I think is going to go a little bit earlier than people think. I'm not me saying that I've heard some top 125 conversation. That's not me saying that I think that's necessarily going to happen. That just me saying that the conversations are at least being had. But if he ends up being a top 150 kid, I wouldn't be shocked, because this is just another wide receiver class, again, that we keep talking about, that is below average for especially what we have now seen the last 4 out of the last 5 years.
Folks, reminder, if you're joining in on YouTube, hit the like button and send us an NFL draft question. We are prioritizing the questions that are sent in the YouTube chat, but we also have ones on Twitter that we are going to get to later on in the show. Also, if you're on Twitter, make sure to hop on YouTube to send us questions. Those are the only ones that we're going to be answering. We've got 2 more in the chat on YouTube that we want to hit on here. First one from Brandon Hallman. He asks, most likely team to trade back in the first and most likely team to trade up in the first. This is trade a really interesting. Yeah. What do you think here?
So I remember we were talking about like Atlanta is desperate for pass rushers, so they may trade up. And then when I looked at their pick total, Joe, do you know they only have like 4 picks in this draft, 4 or 5 picks overall? So Atlanta is like the perfect one in the middle of the first round at pick 15, where like they trade back and they accumulate some draft picks, because 4 to 5 picks is just not a good number, right? So they're a team that I think could trade back and it would make a little bit of sense. They're one that I think makes a lot of sense, actually. So Atlanta, I think, is one. Trade back, Raiders.
Well, and I got one. Raiders make sense. I got one that I think is picking up steam, and I don't know if we're on the same page or not here. The Cleveland Browns, I think, are one to closely monitor, maybe even a multi-trade back, because it feels like you hear Jimmy has them talking about how they don't want to force quarterback if they don't feel comfortable with it. Talked about how it was a swing and a miss with Deshaun Watson. It seems like they're really feeling the effects of missing there, that they're trying to be as careful as possible with this process. And then there was the rumor last week that they're all locked in on Abdul Carter. I feel like that's going to create the circumstance for them to swap with the Giants. And then they're a team that needs to fill multiple roster holes that, hey, maybe we see an additional trade back. If Abdul Carter is on the board at 3, maybe that creates the opportunity. I know you talked about the Falcons not having enough picks, but maybe that incentivizes them or another team to move up. Maybe somebody wants to move up to take Armand Membao, who we just recorded a scouting report on that's going to drop later today. Maybe those are some of the moves that could cause this. But I feel like the Browns, there could be a lot of momentum at the current moment for them to trade back.
Yeah, my only hesitation with the Browns, though, is that although they're not a quarterback needy team, potentially, depending on what they do, look, we'll see what happens over the next couple weeks. But there's a world where the Cleveland Browns don't take a quarterback at number 2. But are you in a good enough position where you can pass on an elite player, though, at number 2? Like, that's my question, right? Like, because you're not guaranteed to be picking that high all the time, for one. But like 2,
well, not if you're a Brown. If you're the Browns
roster. What'd you say?
I said, well, when you're the Browns, you kind of typically are picking that high. So maybe they're just kind of assuming they'll be there next year.
The Browns just won 11 games 2 years ago, Joe, and they made a playoff
run
2 years ago.
I'm joking.
And they're also, I mean, how long of a leash is there for Kevin Stefanski if they have a bad year? You know, like, what is the leash here? Because, yes, 2 years ago.
I feel like longer than most. I feel like it's longer than most.
Maybe. I don't know. Does any NFL coach have a really long leash nowadays, man? Like, we are just so quick to hit the chopping block. Like, I don't know, right? So I could see it, though. The Raiders, I think, make some sense because, like, how the board's going to fall to them right there at their spot later in the top 10, I think it's going to be a little bit funky. You know, here's a weird one. Number 10, Chicago Bears. They are, like, the weirdest team to mock for right now because, like, they don't have a crazy amount of needs, really. I mean, because they filled a lot. I mean, they got a couple interior offensive linemen. Edge might be on the table, but, like, you could probably get someone a little bit later. Because my thing is that pick 10, who are you going to get on the edge? Is it going to be Mykel Williams, maybe? Shamar Stewart? Or would you rather just trade back and take somebody in the mid-first or even a late first that kind of fits a similar profile? Maybe not quite as athletic, but fits a production profile. So they are a team that I think is a sneaky trade back team. The Houston Texans are one that we talk about it for trade ups all the time now because
they need tackle.
25. Yeah. Like, who are you going to get at 25 that's going to be a starting tackle for you in the NFL in this draft? And I know some people will say, hey, you got Titus Howard at right tackle. He stinks, by the way. You have Cam Robinson at left tackle. He stinks, by the way. We're okay at tackle. And I'm just going to be like, no, you're not. Like, you just are. Or Blake Fisher even at right tackle. Either way, you're not good at tackle. You're just not. So
no. Is
this a position where if Will Campbell's fallen a little bit or there was an early run on tackles and you want to make sure that you can get a Kelvin Banks or you get a Josh Simmons that's falling due to the patella injury, I think that the Texans are a perfect team to trade up because they have multiple needs on their offensive line, and that is not a spot that you want to be in.
Right. Maybe the only other thought here is if somebody – I think when the first receiver is picked is going to create not panic, but an incentive for a team to trade up. I don't know for certain who that team is right off the bat. I don't know who that would be because I think that we would need to see who selects the first receiver. So as soon as the Cowboys take Tedero McMillan to 12, which is a very commonly mocked selection right now, and I think it is a great pick for Tet fitting in that system and for the need that they need for the style of receiver, I would think that maybe a team like the Chargers or a team like the Broncos or trying to think who else like really badly needs a receiver. Maybe it's the Packers feel like that they don't want to miss out on their guy. As soon as that first receiver's off the board, I think that a lot of teams are going to think, oh, crap, we need it. We're going to miss out on our guy. Someone else is going to trade up, and that's going to create a massive incentive.
How about tight ends?
Well,
Think
that
about
was the second
this.
thing that just popped
Yeah.
in my head is as soon as Tyler Warren's off the board, does somebody go and trade up to go and take Colston Loveland? I would think that also would be something to pay attention to.
We kind of just assume that the Denver Broncos at 20, even though they signed Evan Ingram, I understand, but you could still take Colston Loveland if you wanted to, or Tyler Warren if he somehow got there. But you have Denver there, and then you have what? The Chargers at 21 right after them. And those are the two teams that you look at and say, those are big tight end teams. But we consistently just kind of mock Colston Loveland to one of them because we just assume that he's going to be there. But if Tyler Warren does go to, we've not seen it multiple mocks now, Jacksonville at 5, but more realistic maybe. What if the Jets take him at 7? And you're in the middle of the first round, and you're like, man, we really thought one of these tight ends was going to drop to us. Does a Los Angeles Chargers say, I want to get up to like 15, who I just talked about with that selection, right? That is where the Atlanta Falcons are picking. What if Colston Loveland's sitting there at 15, Warren's already off the board, and a Los Angeles Chargers say like, oh, I need to go up and get him. And the Falcons will be like, yes, I'll trade back to 21 because I don't have draft picks in this draft. So that's an interesting one too, I think, is that if a tight end run, if Tyler Warren goes off the board in the top 10, how much of a demand do we see for Colston Loveland? Because I actually really like Elijah Arroyo out of Miami.
Oh, I love Arroyo. He's a clear-cut tight end 3 for me, and I think that he's going to go in the second round.
I agree. But here's the thing, though. The drop-off from Colston Loveland to Elijah Arroyo is still pretty gaping, dude. Like, that's a pretty steep drop-off, right? And
there's an even bigger drop-off from Arroyo to whoever the hell is going to be next, if it's Mason Taylor
or Gunnar Helm or like whatever, right? Like, I mean, yes. So I think that massive drop-off, because here's the thing. If the Chargers say like, oh, it's okay, we'll come back and get Elijah Arroyo in the second round. What if you don't get Elijah Arroyo in the second round? Then you're like, oh no, I don't have a tight end anymore. I don't have one. Right. So that demand might cause you to say, I need to go up and get a guy like a Colston Loveland because Tyler Warren went off the board to 7 to the Jets for this argument.
So we got a couple more questions in the YouTube chat. Folks, if you're joining in on YouTube, send us a 2025 NFL draft question in the YouTube chat. We are prioritizing those. We are going to try and answer all of those. We actually probably aren't going to get to most of the Twitter questions that we have because we've had such great engagement from the chat today. It's been the best day for engagement. Again, answering any questions. And if you haven't done so already, please hit that like button and subscribe. And also, if you're on Twitter, jump on over from Twitter onto YouTube and come hang out with us here to send your questions. Next question that we have, this one we kind of already answered, so maybe we can be a little more succinct with this one. Top Tier asked, I see the Titans grabbing a running back later in the draft, even though it isn't necessarily a need. Who are some of the targets? So we already talked about underrated names to know, so partially answering this, but not specific to the Titans. I think that we need to consider here, you already have Tyjae Spears, you already have Tony Pollard. If you do draft somebody, it's going to be somebody who is a utility player that is completely different than both of those skill sets.
A bigger back. Yeah.
Right. A bigger back. So Corey Kiner is already somebody that comes to mind. I would think that they're probably going to go with somebody who's a big body that is going to contribute on special teams. Who are some of those other big dudes that maybe could be an up back on punt, who can run down on kickoff coverage and maybe get a couple of touches?
Khalil Mullings from Michigan is one.
It's a good one. I like that one.
He played linebacker early in his Michigan career, and he had a lot of flashes this past year. I mean, if you watch like the USC game this past year, right, Joe, on like that last touchdown drive from Michigan, it was literally just the Khalil Mullings show down the field, and he was the one that ended up putting them over the top and winning that football game. So Mullings, while not a dynamic change of direction guy, he's a downhill physical runner that can have that type of role. I'll tell you what, man, would you be shocked if Ollie Gordon falls a little bit in this class where he's like more like a midday 3 guy? I mean, like, it's possible. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked.
And but here's my thing though. Ollie Gordon doesn't scream special teams to me though. Ollie Gordon screams big bruiser for a team that's looking for a second back. And if he doesn't work out, I don't think he's going to stick around because he's not. I mean, do you think he does all the other little things well enough to earn him a third running back spot?
I would have to have a conversation with Ollie and see how he's wired personally, right? Like we need to know, because obviously with him being a star the way he wasn't a guy that was asked to do that little meticulous stuff. Another guy we talked about a little bit, although he's not a big power profile like we're talking about with like a Mullings or a Ollie Gordon being 230 pounds. Kyle Monangai fits that bill Like, he absolutely does. Kalman Ungai will run down on a kickoff and cover a kick. Absolutely, he
Yeah.
would. And he's a really good short yardage runner. So Kalman Ungai is like a midday 3 guy to pair it in, even though he's not the biggest back in the world. He is a physical runner that could be a short yardage guy and play special teams without question. Corey Kiner fits that mold as well, although he's not a bigger back either, but he fits the mold that you're talking about in that room.
Next question that we have from Brian. Brian sent us a lot of great questions. How much does corner length determine if they are an outside corner or in the slot? Like if a corner is over 6 feet tall, but has T-Rex arms, does that automatically put him in the box as a nickel slot corner? Yeah, that's an immediate one for me. And that's Jahdae Barron doesn't like specifically fit that description because he's got really good tape on the outside. But that's why I value Jahdae Barron as being a really good slot corner. But at the same time, this is something that you and I have talked about a lot. In order to be a slot corner, you can't just have worse length. You need to be a really strong tackler. You need to be physical. If you don't have that, you're not gonna do well in the slot.
Yeah, you have to fit against the run. Here's the thing with the length outside corner. It matters, Brian. Absolutely, it matters. Here's a couple caveats because there's a nuance to this conversation, right? First part of the nuance. It matters more for a corner that is a man-centric player on the outside, because in that situation, you're one-on-one, typically longer, bigger outside receivers, right? That is the guy that you're going to be pressed against. And in those man situations, you have to react so quick because your back's usually to the ball, right? And you have to be able to react and locate the football. And every inch matters in those types of situations. You're also going against guys that are typically explosive, right? Have some type of vertical speed on top of being a little bit bigger body. So every inch matters in that instance. And I know it sounds very strange for me to say it that way. Maybe a pause would be good on that conversation. But length matters on the outside. It absolutely does. I will say this, though. It matters less if you're playing a lot more zone, right? Like zone-based corners, you can get away with being a little bit small, like, because you're not playing at the catch point as much when you're a zone-based guy. Like, you're just not, because your eyes are back towards the line of scrimmage a lot more, and you can read and react and read the quarterback's eyes, jump routes, like that type of stuff. So it matters less there. There is a number, though, that when you get to 30 and lower, like 30 flat inches and lower as arm length, that's where like red flags start really coming out if you're projecting guys in outside corner, because like that is, you're starting to get into real outside, like that is real outlier territory. And I don't want to live in outlier territory as an evaluator. It's not everything. There's always going to be some outliers that you bet on. Like an instance for me this year is David Walker from Central Arkansas. I'm betting on that outlier. I don't care that he's right around 6'1" and he has 31.5-inch arms. I personally just don't care. I will bet on that football player and I will look past the measurements. But I also don't want to make a living as an evaluator betting on outliers, because the reason that we have these thresholds, we have these data metrics to back up what we see on film, is so that you alleviate risk, right? And you eliminate that risk and you make good decisions ultimately, right? So I am big on those verification processes of using thresholds and data to back up what my eyes see. My eyes are always the most important. But when we're having the conversation of betting on outliers, you have to make sure you trust the tape, man. You have to trust it. There are some guys, again, just don't care. I just don't care. David Walker's won this year. I just don't care. Do not care about those size thresholds. Chris Paul Jr., Ole Miss. The guy, me personally, I don't care that he has 30.5-inch arms, whatever the heck he has. He's a historical outlier, excuse me. Bet on outliers when you believe in them, but don't make a living off of it, because that's when you get burned. And if we're talking about good roster building and consistent roster building, you want to eliminate betting on outliers too often.
Last question that we're going to take right now from the chat, because I want to get to the main storyline or talking point that we titled this video on, because we had a really fun question yesterday that we got on Twitter that we're going to get to after this. But Brian, last question we're going to get to that you sent in. Don't want a helmet scout, but would you have similar concerns about Dante Thornton in that Tennessee scheme that were concerns with Jalen Hyatt in terms of translating to the next level? So as a Giants fan, I feel like the big issue with Jalen Hyatt coming in and then the translation, didn't run a very diverse route tree. And I feel like that has been a problem, that he's not a very good route runner. He's just really fast and he's a really good target over the top. That absolutely is a concern for Thornton, because I think that those same types of concerns are on film with Thornton, and that's why he's maybe not getting projected higher amongst this very weak receiver group.
Why is he not a good route runner? Because he went to an offense that didn't require him to be a good route runner, right? So like he didn't master that craft and that technique. So yes, it's not helmet scouting because again, there are going to be some players that you're just okay with it, right? DK Metcalf was one when he was coming out of Ole Miss. Was he a great route runner? No. Did I care? Absolutely not. Because the guy's 6'3" and runs a 4.35, right? Like I'm betting on that guy every day of the week. He's a freak. A guy like Dante Thornton, it's a really interesting conversation, Joe, because Dante Thornton does kind of fit the freak button. Well, let me rephrase that. He does kind of fit the freak bucket. I'm sorry, dude. This is, yeah, I can't talk right now. But he is 6'5". He runs 4.3 flat. He's explosive. He can jump. There's a lot to like about Dante Thornton. Do I like him personally? No, I don't. And here's the thing. Here's the reason why. Athletes are great. Football players are better. And he's not a good football player. He's not. His hands are suspect. He's not a good route runner. He's skinny and doesn't play well through contact. So I'm not in on Dante Thornton. I'm okay with Dante Thornton like a late day 3 dart throw of athletic traits. That's cool. But if we're talking about him being a guy that's going to rise in this class, nah, man. No. If you just watched the Oklahoma game this year, maybe you're like, oh, man, I could teach Dante Thornton how to play.
Right.
Look what he could do. But no. If you watch consistent film, the effort is inconsistent. The hands are not good. He doesn't play well through contact. All those things matter a lot to me for projecting wide receivers on the next level. So he's a height, weight, speed freak technically, but that system did not help his cause for being a well-developed wide receiver. And I just think that he just doesn't play well through contact in general, which is not a good thing for a receiver.
We're going to jump to one of the Twitter questions that we got last night. We ended up getting this last night. We're probably going to spend a good amount of time on this particular question because we're talking biggest gems, underrated players to know at each position group. Anyone else who's tuning in on YouTube and wants to send us a question about the 2025 NFL Draft, we will get to it. We will prioritize those. And if you haven't done so already and you're tuning in, you haven't hit the like button, please make sure to do so. So the question that we have from Bain Duke Digital Phantom, most underrated prospect. And the way that we kind of thought about this, Ryan, was how can we frame this to talk about like who are the most underrated players at each position? Because it's a very broad question. I want to basically create in most all underrated team. Starting at quarterback, who would you say who should be the most underrated quarterback on this team?
Max Brosmer from Minnesota.
I knew that's who you're going to go with.
Did you have someone different? No,
Brosmer is exactly who I would go with because like I look at the rest of this quarterback class and everybody is being freaking overhyped. Will Howard's overhyped. Jackson Dart's overhyped. Jalen Milroe to an extent. Actually, he is overhyped. Even Kyle McCord to a degree is overhyped. Riley Leonard, I've seen some very ambitious takes, is overhyped. Brosmer does not get a lot of recognition, and I loved his tape and the way that he played at UNH. He had a little bit of a slow start in his first game at Minnesota. It was brutal to watch. But once he got comfortable, you started to see like, hey, this guy has exactly what you look for a backup that sticks around for a long time. I don't think he starts. I don't think he's ever going to start.
No.
But if I were to pinpoint like who's the day 3 prospect who sticks on a roster as a backup for an extended period of time, I think it's going to be Brosmer.
I think he's Chase Daniel. And like there's nothing wrong with being Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel played quarterback in the NFL as a backup for a long, long time. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I would say this though, Joe. If he was being drafted and pegged where he should be, my answer would actually be Tyler Shuck. Because like for me, Tyler Shuck's a day 3 dart throw. It has some question marks behind him, but has some like starter makeup to him. But if we're talking about Tyler, I mean, people are still mocking him at the back end of the first round or like second round. And I'm just like, no, we're not doing that. But so if it's appropriately priced Tyler Shuck, I would be all in on as the answer to this question. But in the current state of where we are, Max Brosmer as a 6th, 7th round, maybe even priority free agent, like that's the guy that I like. He throws on time. He's anticipatory. He's very accurate. No, he's not incredibly mobile. Doesn't have a howitzer. But if we're talking about a guy that could be a backup and a solid to good backup in the NFL for a decent amount of time, I think that's Brosmer.
All right, let's try to rip through all these position groups here. Most underrated running back. I still stick minus Landon Harrison, who we talked at the beginning. We already really talked a shitload about these running backs, so I'm just going to keep it concise. Kyle Monangai does everything right. I think he's going to stick on a roster as a third running back and then eventually start to get carries over a period of time. So Kyle Monangai is my immediate pick for most underrated running back.
Well, my pick was DJ Giddens until now he's starting to get pegged top 100 by everyone since he tested well. It's like, oh my gosh, you could just watch the film and wouldn't know he was a top 100 player, but that's another conversation for another day. My real answer then is Woody Marks from USC. Talked about him a ton in the opening. Mississippi State transfer, catches the ball extremely well, really good in tight spaces. You're probably going to get him in like the 5th, 6th, maybe even 7th round bucket, and I think that he could play for you in 2025.
Wide receiver. Where does your head go with wide receiver?
Daniel Jackson, man, Minnesota.
Oh, that's actually a really good one. That is, I'm not even going to argue with that. Daniel Jackson, not getting talked about at all in this class, is insane. Go look at his hands, and he's a very efficient route runner, and I believe he tested pretty well too. I don't understand why no one wants to give Daniel Jackson an ounce of recognition.
He was a track guy in high school, man. He was like a 10,500 meter dude or something like that. Yeah. Like he can run. I don't know. I know that he played on a Minnesota offense that from a passing perspective is not what you would call a passing offense. I get that, but he was still very productive the last 3 years. And I don't know. I look at him and I say that kid's going to play football in the NFL, whether that's as a solid number 3 or a high end number 4. Like I'm not 100% sure where he's ultimately pegged depending on what the situation he gets drafted into is. But that's a kid that you're probably going to get in like the 5th round. And I'll be like, yep, I'll take Daniel Jackson stocks all day. That's a good football player, man.
Tight end. Jake Brenningstool is one who comes to mind. His season wasn't as sexy as I think we were hoping, but I still think he's like a super fluid mover. I think that he'd stick on a team as a second tight end, and maybe he could sneakily become a team's number 1 option. Like I wouldn't be shocked if that came to fruition.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked in a couple of years. He's like Jake Ferguson that plays for the Cowboys right now, where he's just like a low-end tight ends, a starting tight end. I wouldn't be shocked at all about it. I had him written down. You know, another guy I had written down, Joe, that I think everyone's completely forgot about because he was banged up like all year. But Mitchell Evans could be a tight end too in the NFL for a team out of Notre Dame. He's got a big body. Yeah. He has experience playing in line. He catches everything. He's got great hands. So yes, he's not a dynamic athlete. He ran even though he did run like 4.69, I think at the pro day, which is a solid number for as big as he is, but he's probably not a starter on the next level. But if you told me Mitchell Evans is a good tight end too in the NFL, I would not be shocked at all. I think he naturally will be.
Offensive tackle, easiest one for me. Jalen Travis from Iowa State, previously of Princeton.
It's not Holland Pierce.
It's
not Holland Pierce.
No, it's not Holland Pierce. I love Jalen. Like, seriously, wait, I've seen so much hype for freaking Holland Pierce, who is stiff as a board and plays so high because he's so tall. He can't sink. He can't get down to guys' levels. None of the stuff that you need from a tackle. But Jalen Travis, who's a similar physical profile, just a little bit smaller, can do that. And this is a guy who's got just a big ass chest. He's one of those dudes that when you look at him on film, every muscle is so filled out, and he has some of the strongest hands in the class. I am such a Jalen Travis fan. If there is a guy that goes in like the 4th round, which is probably where he goes, maybe he sneaks into the 3rd round, that goes on to become like a really reliable, good starting offensive tackle, I think it's Jalen Travis.
Did I tell you I saw him in person at a Princeton game 2 years ago? But he wasn't.
You
playing.
did. We talked about
clothes. He's a big kid, man. But like he didn't put on the weight yet. Going to Iowa State, I think was great for him because he got into that legit FBS strength program, which I think was very important for his profile because he's a little bit skinny when I first saw him. But Joe, I was just looking at his testing numbers, man. He had like a 34-inch vert or something like that. He had like a 34-inch vert. He ran a good 40. Like he's a pretty good athlete overall. Chase Lunt's my pick from UConn, though. Why are we not talking about Chase Lunt? I don't understand why we're not talking about Chase Lunt.
Okay, wait. So the reason why I didn't bring up Chase Lunt, I feel like you just said with DJ Giddens, Lunt for me was like my early flag plant. Like, okay, guys, like this guy is going to be an insanely good starter in the NFL. I got to see him in person at the UConn Pro Day. He's built like a freaking tight end. He has got no real fat on his frame. But I feel like right now everybody's kind of become privy to him. I feel like everybody already knows Chase Lunt, that's ingrained in the minutia of the late stages of the draft process.
Yeah. So I kind of feel a little bit. So there was some hype on him early in the draft process, and then like he didn't go to the Senior Bowl because he was injured. He didn't test because of the injury and all that type of stuff. So he kind of has just been kind of forgotten because he hasn't been in front of people as much. But so I see him now in like 4th, 5th round mocks, and I'm just like, man, like I think he might still go top 100. Like I think he might with his athletic gifts that he has. So yes, talk more about Chase Lunt. I like Chase Lunt a good deal.
Interior offensive line, obviously
This
Willie
gets harder.
Lampkin.
Oh my gosh, yeah, this one gets
No,
hard,
okay, wait.
It's not a great. Yes,
I have a really good answer, and it is a guy.
Oh, I thought
everyone
Willie
enjoyed our.
Lampkin was your answer. I'm sorry. I thought
No,
he was your
it's
answer.
not. It's no. If the pick was for H back, I really think that Willie Lampkin is going to carve out a career.
He's like a 5'2" and 270 pounds. He's not an H back.
Get him down to 250, and if he's run, I don't need him to run that fast. I think that you could get Willie Lampkin to stick on a team as a fullback. I really think that he could. I wouldn't be shocked.
I can't tell you how much I hate that bit. I hate it so much.
There's some guys I hate you
that are just really good college football players, and we should keep them as
find
really
a way
good
to get him. Try to find a way to get him onto the field. It's just like, who's the hoss that's the Ravens fullback? I'm blanking on his damn name. He was the main defensive tackle. The Ravens fullback. He was the main defensive tackle, and they moved him to fullback. A perfect example of this where
Ricard,
was not good enough to play. Yes, Patrick Ricard. I think that he could totally be Patrick Ricard. I think he totally could be. He goes hard as shit.
Go look up.
He kills people.
Go look up Patrick Ricard's pro day numbers. Please go look them up. Go look them up right now.
I refuse.
Okay.
All right. Wait. Let me give an answer here to interior offensive line. By the way, anyone who has dropped questions on YouTube, we are going to get to them. We will answer all the YouTube chat questions before we close out, but let's finish ripping through here. We are interviewing Jackson Slater tomorrow, and that is going to drop tomorrow afternoon, the interior offensive lineman from Sacramento State. He had an awesome performance at the Senior Bowl. He has been a riser. I think he's just really fluid, reliable guy who goes like in the 5th, 6th round that sticks around at the very least as a rotational depth lineman who could eventually start. I like Jackson Slater. I think that's my easy pick for interior offensive line.
Joshua Gray is my pick from Oregon State. Played a lot of left tackle early on in his career, transitioned inside the guard. I think he's a really smooth athlete, man. Really smooth athlete, 6'4", 300 pounds. He's going to be more of an outside zone exclusive player, a guy that needs to be on the move a little bit, but I think he has upside as a developmental guard or developmental center on the next level with solid movement skills. So that would be my pick, Joshua Gray from Oregon State.
Question that we had from Brian in the chat addresses this. He asked favorite day 3 defensive tackle. I've got 2. Actually, CJ West is probably going to be a day 2 guy from Indiana. I think that he has looked so good throughout this process. So I really like him. But Jamari Caldwell, I think is like your prototypical nose that you take in the 4th round. And then for the next 4 years, he just kicks ass and eats up space. And then eventually you sign him to a nice little extension. I think Jamari Caldwell, easy pick.
Jamari is a good player, man. I recommended him when he was at Houston, Joe. He was at Houston. No one knew who that dude was. Then he hit the portal and he's going to Oregon and he's a good player. Yeah, he's good. He's good. I'll tell you who it isn't. It's not Yaya Black. That is not my pick. Absolutely not.
God, talk about a guy who's in an awful process since getting a lot of love in the preseason from the NFL. Wow.
How about Jordan Phillips from Maryland would be a pick for me. I actually just did some deeper work on him. I'd watched him already.
Big ass back in a good way.
He is a brick. You know what, dude? Like he is built like a fire hydrant and just no bad weight on him, despite him being 300 plus pounds. He is explosive. He's physical. Good luck digging him out, dude. Like good luck. He is almost a movable object when he really digs in his heels. So yes, 4th, 5th round, Jordan Phillips out of Maryland. You're getting a guy that's at least going to contribute on early running downs.
Saying he's got a big ass back. I know that the kind of phrasing of that usually means big fat ass. That's not what I mean by that. A back
You're saying
day
he's
hates
swole,
to
dude.
see.
Like he could squat a lot.
No.
Like,
Yes, I quite literally. I'm
Yeah.
being as literal as possible. That man's lats are insane. Go look at how wide he is. This is something that I've brought to you multiple times before. Not enough people talk about with offensive and defensive linemen back muscles. We spend so much time talking about chest and arm length. I want a guy who's got a strong ass back, because when you got a strong ass back, that means that you can maintain your balance. You can withstand and also take on pressure really easily because your back can absorb it. It is the biggest muscle on your body. I think that there's a lot of overrated prospects that have weak ass backs, but I'm telling you right now, Jordan Phillips hates to see, or a back day hates to see Jordan Phillips. That man probably rose some in crazy numbers. His lower back, he probably has a crazy deadlift max that he puts out there. No, I like Jordan Phillips for what he is. Edge is tough because
he's
there's
also
so many.
he's also one of the youngest players in this draft because he declared as a third-year player. Yeah. So yeah.
All right, let's try to get through a couple. Let's rip through these just quick hits, and then we'll get to the last questions before we close out today. David Walker for edge, you mentioned earlier. He's getting overlooked because of his size.
That's my guy.
Damn it.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. No, I'm going with David Walker. Screw you.
Yeah. Go with David Walker. Honorable mentions to Jod Joyner out of Minnesota for athletic upside, and Ethan Downs for just being a very solid player. He is someone. I was on this show on A to Z Nashville show, Joe, and we were talking about Ethan Downs, and we were talking about how he is appropriately priced Jack Sawyer. That is like who Ethan Downs actually is, because
they're the same player. Couldn't be more of the same player. So similar. Won a national championship, and according to everybody, he's such a high floor player, so he should be a first rounder. Anyone who tells you that has no freaking idea what they're talking about.
If we played that game of would you rather have Jack Sawyer in the second round or Ethan Downs in the sixth, it would be Ethan Downs in the sixth without even hesitation. Like it wouldn't even be close.
God, this is gonna be one of the worst overdrafts. Linebacker Jamon Dumas Johnson. I think that's like a guy that you take late. That's gonna be plug and play starting Mike.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. I was looking down the list. I still kind of like Francisco Mauigoa from Miami. He wasn't good this year as he was in 2023, but he's a big linebacker who can run pretty well. So like I'll still take the plunge on that one. Yeah, that'll be my pick. I'll go with Francisco Mauigoa.
Cornerback, I've got two.
Kobe Bryant.
Okay, Kobe Bryant was the one that I was going to go with. I'll let you talk about him. I liked Elijah Huzzy a couple of years ago when I watched him for RPM, the scouting agency that you and I both worked for, right? North Carolina A&T. I remember I recommended him, but I don't think he made it through cross checks. I think that like he's just got the mentality of a starting slot. He's compact and pretty good tackler. I like Huzzy. I think that if there's like a late guy that ends up being a quality starter. Oh, you know who you're probably going to bring up is your boy Traffic Cone.
Who's Traffic Cone? Who are you talking about?
Bilal Coney. Remember? You don't remember the combine? You kept talking about him.
I do like Coney, man. I do like Coney. Yeah. No, he's 6'1". He's 190 pounds. He ran 4.43. I think he's got a lot of makeup. He's the Western Michigan cornerback. So I think him in the mid to late day 3 bucket, I think is a very interesting player. Kobe Bryant's my answer because I think there's a chance that Kobe falls to like the 4th round now, and it's a starting corner to me. Whether he's playing outside corner or inside at nickel, super physical, up to 180 pounds now. His straight line speed, I think, is good on film, but he only ran like 4.5, so it wasn't great from a testing numbers perspective, but I didn't see an issue there, and he's got good change of direction. So he's a smaller corner. That's going to be the outlier conversation we've had earlier in this show, but yeah, I'll take the plunge on Kobe Bryant every time in like the 4th rounds. Like absolutely.
Safety, I don't have a final evaluation on this guy yet, but I was so impressed with the way that he played in one-on-one coverage. He's not like a crazy athlete, but Mac McWilliams from UCF, I just thought that he looked so underrated and reliable in the way that he won in coverage. He had a couple nice plays with the ball in the air and disrupting the catch point. If that's a player who has the opportunity to stick because he's high motor and on special teams and then works his way into a starting lineup, not going to go in and be a Pro Bowler, but just ends up starting on a team, I think Mac McWilliams would be my pick there.
My pick is Lathan Ransom from Ohio State. That's my guy.
It's a good one.
Number 8, physical, man. I think he was more athletic early in his career at Ohio State, and I think the injuries that he's had has kind of zapped him a little bit, and that's the reason that he's probably going to last A3 is because of the injury background that he has, the durability concerns. But that kid is going to play special teams for a very long time as long as his body holds up, and he could play on defense as kind of that short zone, strong safety that is super physical. So, yes, I will buy into Lathan Ransom on a day 3 valuation. Absolutely.
He's been a weird faller throughout this process. So I really like that one. We got 2 questions in the chat. We're going to go for a little bit longer here. We're going to probably go over the hour. Reminder, anyone who's in the chat, drop a comment on YouTube. We are only answering questions on YouTube. So if you're on Twitter, go to Ryan's Twitter, click on the YouTube link, or go to the A to Z Film Room channel and click in. Send us your 2025 NFL draft question. And if you haven't done so, guys, please hit the like button. The like button, the like feature is the most important damn thing on YouTube. The more likes that we get on a video, the more time it is. Well, when you're doing a live stream, the more likes.
Yeah.
That and retention and also comments. And we've had I want to give a shout out to everybody who's commented, by the way. You guys have been awesome. And this is a crowd of guys that we've interacted with before. Everybody that appreciates our content and likes our content would really, really, really appreciate everyone who's been super positive as we've continued to grow this channel in a new direction. The 2 questions that we got here, though, so far. Is it worth the 49ers drafting an offensive lineman with their first pick if Membow isn't there? We're waiting to get somebody like the kid from William and Mary, referring to Charles Grant. I think that if you are, here's my biggest thing, Ryan, with the 49ers. I think that their offensive line is going down a very slippery slope because it has gotten old. And then eventually in the next couple of years, you're not going to have Trent Williams. So you need to double dip here. I love the idea of taking Charles Grant somewhere at the end of day 2, early day 3. But I would put out there, if Armand Membow goes as early as we think that he could go and be the first tackle selected in the top 7 picks, I would think that Will Campbell would be on the board. And I would absolutely take Will Campbell, or I would take Kelvin Banks. I think that offensive line should be a priority because you're investing all of this damn money into Brock Purdy, who is not an athletic freak, who is going to be able to make big plays as an improviser when things break down. You have to build a fortress around him and find value with weapons that fits your scheme, that you've turned these kind of unexpected players into superstars the way that you have. You can draft guys on day 2, but you need to build a gigantic wall in front of Brock Purdy if you want to get back to Super Bowl contention. That has to be priority number 1. That has not been over the past couple of years, and I would argue was a big reason why this past season they were not as good as they could have been.
I am going to have a slight cop-out answer.
It
depends what the board looks like. Depends what the board looks like, Joe. There are needs at edge.
That was the worst answer you've ever given on this channel. Boo!
It depends.
Boo this man.
It is Will Johnson on the board? Is a pass rush you like on the board? There's a lot of things that go into this conversation. There's a lot. I in a vacuum though would be okay with taking one of the offensive linemen that isn't named Armand Membow. If I'm going to answer it more directly, I would be okay with it. I actually kind of like the fit for Will Campbell with San Francisco. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I love it.
They have a need at right tackle. They are still trotting out Colton McKivitz for whatever reason. Colton McKivitz is not good. So, you need a new right tackle at some point. You lost Aaron Banks in free agency this offseason as well, inside of guard. So, you have needs on the interior offensive line. You have needs at right tackle. You're not going to ask Will Campbell to come in and be your starting left tackle day 1, right? Because, that's our hesitation with him a little bit in some parts of the draft community. But he won't have to be that guy. He'll be a right tackle in what is still a run-centric offense, and they do a lot of RPO. They do a lot of play action. You can scheme enough from a pass protection perspective where you don't have to put him on an island all the time and ask him to be a stalwart pass blocker from day 1. But you know what Will Campbell could do? He can compete. He's super nuanced. And he's a damn good run blocker. So that from day 1 is what you're going to ask him to. So either starting at right tackle or starting inside a guard. I think that is a very clean evaluation for him. And I would be very okay with him drafting at 11 if Will Johnson's not on the board. If a couple other guys that I like aren't on the board. If he's there, though, I would be okay with taking him.
I would argue, though, that where they sit, they have the luxury of taking any of the offensive linemen, Tyler Booker, Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, Josh Simmons, and it not being a reach. So that's why I really think that, like, hey, you're sitting where you are. You have other needs. You have a lot of needs, and you can go best player available. But in a scarce offensive line class, take advantage of where you're sitting, where you're not like the Patriots are in kind of in hell because they need to take an offensive lineman. But the problem is you kind of have to reach and bypass the chance to take Mason Graham or to take Will Johnson, any of these premier blue chip type prospects that we've talked about at their respective positions. Trading back might actually be smart for them so they can accumulate some more picks and some starters. So I was listening to the Athletic podcast and Jordan Reed was on there with Robert Mays and they were talking about this. Like, it is kind of like a really hellish situation because if you wait until the second round, at the top of the second round, there are not going to be good options for you. You're going to be kind of like, oh man, this guy could probably start, but like, man, we missed out on what could have been the good starting tackles.
I guess my question for that conversation, though, with the Patriots specifically, is are you worried if you're drafting offensive linemen that aren't going to help you immediately necessarily? Because it's still a multi-year rebuild, right? Like, I'm not like looking at that situation being like, hey, 2025, man, we're going to compete. Like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You are trying to fix the offensive line. You're trying to find more pass catcher, and you're trying to retool this defense under Mike Vrabel. Like, I think if you take the approach of 2 to 3 years is the window that we need to do, I'm not worried about taking Chase Lunt on the end of day 2 and letting him take his lumps, right? Like, I'm not worried about that in this type of situation. I don't know, man. I think we're worried too much about the immediacy for the New England Patriots when I'm more worried about the long term. Like, I want them to be built properly so Drake May doesn't get his butt kicked in 2 to 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of my thought process. But
that's why I think Charles Grant ends up being like such a sexy pick for them somewhere on day 2. It's like you don't even need to start him. You just draft him in a system, in a culture that emphasizes physicality and fundamentals, and they've had some really good offensive linemen with the Patriots and with Mike Vrabel. I think that Charles Grant feels like a New England Patriot to me. Last question, unless somebody else in the YouTube chat sends us another question. But the last question that we have right now, so this is the last call for questions, though. If anyone has another question, we will get to it. But if not, we're going to end after this one.
It's closing time. One last call for. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hey, don't get us copyright flagged by singing.
It's not real. It's not the real song, so it's fine.
I know. I'm obviously joking. Bearded Theo asks favorite fits for the Vikings if they stick and pick at 24. I think that Nick Emanwari would be so awesome for them, but I don't know if Nick Emanwari is going to be there. Malachi Starks, I love the thought of. Again, I don't know if he's going to be there. And then I also really like the thought of them taking an outside corner, depending on who's still on the board. I think that for them, secondary is probably the smartest move because they spent a lot of money in free agency on boosting that offensive line, and they didn't spend money at other important positions of their defense.
Yep, one of the top 2 safeties would be the spot for me. The other one that I do like a lot is Derek Harmon from Oregon, potentially on the interior.
Do like that one too.
I think that would be very interesting because he's played anywhere. He played nose at Michigan State, and then he kind of lost some weight this past year for Oregon, so he was playing all over the place. He was playing everything from 2-eye, 2, 4, 4-eye, 3-tech. He was playing all over the place for Oregon, so he's a very disruptive, kind of versatile defensive lineman. So Derek Harmon or one of the top 2 safeties, if either of them are on the board. I expect at least one of them to be, but we shall see how that board falls.
All right. That was the last question. Folks, we are going to be back Wednesday at noon next week. If you've got questions, be on the lookout. You can follow us on Twitter for when we ask for questions at Joe DeLeone at Rising Draft. If you're just hopping in as we're closing out, hit the like button. And also please subscribe so you don't miss out in the future. We'll talk to you guys later.